Hey everyone, welcome back to AskAmy. I have a question today from Ramin, and it's not exactly a question per se. There's not a real question to it, but he asked me to speak to body dysmorphic disorder. So if you aren't aware, it's essentially kind of where we have a lot of thinking about our body and we see our body in a way that's really not accurate. It's very subjective, very skewed. So Ramin is in Iran. He told me the story of all the hoops he jumped through to get a hold of my book, which is really awesome. Like, he's reading it now and loving it, but it was not easy for him to get. So I really appreciate, that he did all that and that he's really into it and seeing so much in it. And he just wanted to hear a little bit more broadly about this particular issue. Now, for anyone listening, what I'm going to say about body dysmorphic disorder applies to kind of any disorder, any diagnosis. Like as always, the things I share here are bigger. So don't tune out if this isn't your particular thing. You see your body accurately, wonderful. I'm sure there's other things going on for all of us. And just hearing about how we're going to look at disorders and what this all means and what's really going on kind of under the hood in this can help our understanding in general. So it's really, really helpful to get specific questions like this and to listen, again, even if they don't really relate to you necessarily. So the first thing I kind of just want to say about this is that this diagnosis of body dysmorphic disorder is a thing, right? It feels like a thing. Many diagnoses do. It feels like a thing. It's like, oh, I have this. This is how we say it. I have this. And I know when I've had various diagnoses in the past, that's how it's felt at some point. It was kind of like, oh, this is now a thing I have. Like, I have appendicitis. I have a cold. I have BDD, or I have PTSD, or I have whatever it might be. And I want to kind of back us off of that a little bit. So this I have in this seeing it as a thing, it sounds a little bit minor, but it's really, really huge to kind of help you back up and see what's really going on. So Ramin, although you've been given this description of your experience and your behavior, it fits under a description that you might call body dysmorphic disorder. See if you can open up to see that, okay, this isn't a thing that you have. It's not a thing, period. It's not, there's no thing. There's nothing there. There's no place it lives. It isn't in you. It isn't in your genes and showing up without question. Even genes don't really work that way, right? Like, they turn on, they turn off. There's all kinds of stuff involved. There's no thing that exists out there that we have, or in there, I should say, that we have. And when we start to back off that a little bit, everyone's different, but for some people that's huge, because again, we just naturally get these labels and we kind of go through life just, okay, that's in there now. Like, this is going to show up. It's going to keep leading the way. It's going to taint everything I do. No, it doesn't necessarily work that way, and it's not in there. There is no thing in there. So instead, see if you can look at a diagnosis or a label as a description of the content that your mind happens to go toward. So your mind in body dysmorphic disorder happens to talk all kinds of stories about how you look and what's going on with your body and how it is. And in particular, those stories tend to be very inaccurate. That's another way of saying what body dysmorphic disorder is. It isn't this thing you have. It's not living within you. It's not in your brain. It's not that big. It's simply a description of the direction your mind travels in. Now, it's not even saying anything bad about your mind. Your mind's just a machine. It sounds like it's working great, right? You're very resourceful. You got a hold of my book. You're reaching out. You're looking into this. Lots of things in your life are great. So there is no bigger issue in that sense, and there's no issue with your mind even. It's just that when your mind goes off into a direction and kind of gives you experience, it paints pictures for you and gives judgments and stories and all of this kind of stuff. In your particular case, they tend to be about your body a lot. They tend to be very inaccurate. Okay, well, that's the content. That's the story that your mind is tossing out to you and it's being brought to life within you. That's very, very different than saying that you have this disorder and you've had it since childhood. Very different. It's a description of a place your mind travels. It's not personal. It's not stable. It's not a threat to your mental well-being. It's simply a label around the stories that your mind tends to tell. And again, I have several questions in the queue with from people who have been diagnosed with various things, and see if you can all kind of try this on. So when you have relationship OCD, for example, which is another one, there's not this special little area in your brain that's relationship OCD and yours is flipped on and now you have to find a way to flip it off. All that means is that your mind tends to go a little fast and a little nutty when it comes to relationship stuff. Ramin's does around body stuff. Mine used to too, around all kinds of various things. So we can call those all things. Ooh, you have this phobia, you have this OCD, you have this dysmorphic disorder. It's all the same. It's all the same. The only difference is in the what. What your mind is talking about, what it happens to be a little fixated about. It's all very temporary. It's all coming to life, feeling really real, but then moving away. Even when it feels like an obsession, even when it's there a lot, that ebb and flow never goes away. Never. So you want to look toward that. Okay, maybe it ebbs and flows and my body's really bad and now my body's not so bad. I'll give you that. That might be your experience. But look toward the ebb and flow and look less toward the details in the story, because we already know those aren't accurate. So the diagnosis thing, again, I just see it as a description of the content. Description of the content. And if there's one thing I've seen be incredibly helpful for people who are looking in the direction of this understanding, trying to find freedom from something, it's a focus away from the content. So again, by the content, I mean, there's something wrong with your body, Ramin. That's what your mind tells you. Or for someone else, there's something wrong in her relationships, and relationships are scary. For someone else, there's something wrong with, the germs in the house, and the germs are scary. The details, okay, fine. But we want to look deeper than the details in the story and look to what's happening. And that same process is happening for all of you and for all of us all the time. Thought is simply being brought to life. And we want to stay out of the what and more toward the how and the that this is happening. So diagnosis, okay. Helpful maybe, unhelpful probably at times, just is what it is. It's just a label that describes how life happens to be showing up through you. It says nothing about your health, nothing about your future at all. So we know these labels and diagnoses, sometimes they're just words. I mean, they don't have any inherent power. They're not good or bad. But we know that all of us, and myself included, we can see that as we can see something good or helpful in that, but we can also get kind of trapped in it. It's just how we view it, what we do with it in our own experience, innocently. So it's easy to see, when people talk a lot about how, diagnosis or a label, that's bad, let's stay away from that. But there's this also kind of interesting, potentially positive side to it, which is interesting, which struck me when I was emailing with you, Ramin, is you've had BDD since childhood, you say, and you want help, and you know it's an issue, and you've gone to great lengths to get yourself some help, even when it's not easily available where you are. Now, knowing that you've been given this label, and knowing that your mind tends to go, what it is by definition is your mind tells wildly inaccurate stories about your body. That's the definition of what you're saying you have, right? Your mind tells wildly inaccurate stories about your body. again, same with all kinds of things in relationship. The woman out, and I will address your question soon. I'm sorry it's taken a while, but who wrote me with relationship OCD? Okay, your mind says obsessive and compulsive things about your relationships. Same thing, right? Exact same thing. So by definition, by having these labels and these diagnoses, we're seeing, oh, this is inaccurate. I really want you to look at that, because that's the key to it right there. It's kind of like, by the time we see or know, oh, my mind is telling inaccurate stories, I almost want to say, like, well, what's the problem? Now, I know the problem is that the stories come to life in such a real way, and we feel the effects of those stories, and we get really tangled up and really worried about the stories our mind is telling, and we feel it, and we don't like these feelings, and so it becomes a big mess. But if we could back off of that a little bit, if we could see, oh, okay, my mind's just over here telling really inaccurate stories about my body or my finances or my relationships or my career or whatever, and we know that's happening. And yes, it's brought to life, and yes, we feel it, but we know it's inaccurate. By definition, we know that. Can you see how that gives a little bit of room? Can you see how you can start to see, oh, okay, that's just what my mind does, but I'm okay. I'm the one looking for help. I'm the one knowing this is an issue. I'm the one with the wherewithal to go get the diagnosis to begin with. Like, you know, there's so much health and wisdom and resilience and clarity still there, clearly, right? It's just that in its downtime, your mind's off talking about what's wrong with your body. Well, what if we just, this is crazy, but what if you just know that and just discount it? I am not at all making light of the suffering, trust me, because I've been there, but what if it's that simple? It reminds me of that movie, A Beautiful Mind, which I apologize, I don't remember the details because I saw it when it came out like 15 years ago or something, but from what I remember, this genius mathematician, right, had everything in life going for him, really was brilliant, doing amazing things, and then was schizophrenic. And in the midst of being a complete genius, he had all kinds of, what do they call it, like delusions and fears and stuff come to life. That's not the word I'm looking for. I can't think of the word. But anyway, he was really paranoid, right, about all this stuff. And he'd have all these, man, what's that word? Anyway, he would get caught up in all these stories of things that weren't actually happening, right? And of course, that's huge. That's like it stops your world, right? And you're like, what's going on? What's wrong with me? And all of that. And he went through all of that as they showed in the movie. But from what I remember, my very hazy memory of it, toward the end, where it kind of lands is him being able to let this mathematical genius come through him, also be caught up in all these delusions and hallucinations. That's the word I was looking for. All these hallucinations. Know that, yes, the hallucinations feel absolutely real and vivid when he's in them, but know that he has hallucinations. Like, know that, okay, when all of a sudden things are looking crazy and I'm on high alert and I feel my body and all this kind of stuff, oh yeah, that's what happens in my mind sometimes. I have hallucinations. And there's a space in there. There's a space in there when we can see that. And that's exactly like this for you, Ramin. Like, yes, your mind tells crazy, inaccurate, painful, I'm sure, emotional, I'm sure, things about your body. Your mind just goes there. But you know it goes there, and you aren't it, and you're okay, and you don't need to fix it. You just need to see it going there and say, okay, my mind's going there again. And you become a little more soft around it, if that makes sense, a little more distance from it. You feel a little safer in it. And the really crazy thing is, when we have that bit of softness and distance and safety, it stops going there in the same way. And at the very least, it stops bothering you, which is really what we're all looking for. So I hope this makes sense. Again, whether you have a diagnosis or not, no matter what it is, because they're all exactly the same. This applies to anything. It's kind of seeing, yeah, that's where my mind happens to go, hence the label. That thing isn't living in me. It's not a thing you have. It's just a description of where your mind tends to go. And by seeing that, like by definition, it's okay, my mind goes in inaccurate places. Mine does too, everybody's does. But when you know you don't have to take it so seriously and you start to be more on the lookout for it and you just know it's there and it's like, oh, okay, that's happening. I'm not gonna trust what my mind tells me about my body right now for you, Ramin. Like, I'm just not gonna trust that because I know it's not trustworthy. There's a safe place in there where you do start to see things that are trustworthy. Like what comes up is a little wiser and makes more sense and feels different than that habitual little round and round chatter. So I hope this is helpful. Thank you so much, Ramin, for your question and for all that you've done for yourself, really, to kind of look in this direction. And I know it's not easy where you are. It's not easy for you to just jump on the internet and see all this stuff or just order any old book off Amazon, all the stuff that we take for granted. So I really appreciate it. And I want you to see that as evidence of your resilience and resourcefulness, that you are fine. Yeah, your mind talks about your body in ways that aren't accurate. Okay, but you're okay. You're clearly okay. And we all are, because that's just how it works. So thank you so much for listening. If you want to hear more about diagnoses or labels, or start to feel into this space, no matter what's going on within your experience, it's amazing how when we start to see our experience for what it is, and we know what's there beyond it, beneath it, we know there's health there, we know there's clarity there, that it's like it widens. Like we get to be on this side with the health and the clarity despite what's happening. It's amazing. It's amazing what changes for us. So if you want to see more about that, I would love to have you in the upcoming course of the Little School of Big Change, which opens October 1st. So get on the wait list to find out more about that. And I will see you back here next week. Thanks, guys.